movies. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate movies. My guest today, the wonderful Erin Tracy.
Yay, thanks for having me.
You're so tentative.
I feel I'm nervous about the movie I selected for today.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Because you changed tack a couple times in the
Yes.
process.
I did.
And we have hit some choppy waters in the filmmaking world. Choppy waters of Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ.
Yes.
Just in time for Easter.
I thought you would like the timing. I originally picked Demolition Man, but it turns out I really love that movie, so
It's a great movie.
I had to do The Passion of the Christ because it's a rough one for me.
Two very different movies where you're seeing naked Italian men. Very different movies.
Yeah, I mean, that is the part I like the best about both movies, so that's what they have in common, I feel like.
Yeah. If Jesus had called sex the old hunka chunka, then we probably would not be even having this conversation
Just
right
if
now.
that actor had peck implants like Stallone, I feel like.
Did he have peck implants?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
This is blowing my mind.
I mean,
What cup size did he go to?
A. That was a bad joke. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, listen, we need all the levity we can get before we
I
talk
know.
about Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ.
I have to tell you, so I picked Demolition, and your lovely producer was like, no, you may not select that because you like it too much.
Shout out to Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben. I'm going to look at everybody's camera. Hey, Ben. And so I was like, okay, if I'm being honest with myself, it's The Passion of the Christ. Like, that's.
Yeah.
But then we were scheduled to record this podcast a week ago, and I got food poisoning. And so then I smote? You know what I mean? Is that the past tense of smite?
You're
Was
worried.
I smoted?
Yeah. Did God touch his finger on your gutty works and fuck up your potential podcast episode? Does God listen to Blockbusting? Is this the most important podcast in the universe?
I mean, maybe but only for my episode.
Only for your episode. No. But here you are now.
Yes.
Passion of the Christ came out February 2004.
Yes.
Notorious. I have no qualms saying this movie is notorious. Directed by Mel Gibson, shortly before his fall from grace.
Right.
Jim Caviezel as Jesus Christ. We have Maya Morgenstern as Mary. Monica Bellucci as Mary Magdalene. It is widely regarded as one of the most divisive, controversial films in cinematic history. And also affirmed by Christians as one of the best Christian films.
I know, I'm so sorry.
This is really I was watching because Ben sent me the trailer. Have you seen the trailer for it?
Yes, but that a million years ago. I mean, but I remember it.
I had seen the trailer, and I have not watched the trailer or the movie. I'd never seen the movie until you brought up doing it for the show. And I was looking at YouTube comments on the trailer, and the amount of people who in the comments were saying that they were saved by watching this movie and brought to the light of Jesus by seeing this movie.
Yeah.
A movie where you watch a man get beaten to death over the course of 2 hours.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Why is this the movie? Listen, if you're a Christian, I got no problem with your faith, but why is this the one that's going to bring you to it?
Right. It's not, I want to be clear that it's not the story.
Yeah.
It's the execution.
Yeah, literally.
Pun intended.
Oh boy.
I'm so sorry. I just wrote about a bunch of really bad dad jokes for this podcast because I'm afraid. But yeah, I feel like I agree with you. I have so much to say about it's not like this story, I think, could be a very beautiful and inspiring story.
I have a question for you because
Yes.
I think this will because I have an experience with this movie that I would imagine is probably the same experience that a lot of people had. I did not have, which was like you saw it in theaters
Yes.
with your like ostensibly like a church group of some kind, which is the experience that like I know a lot of people when it came out
Yeah.
who I knew because I was going to church, I was in a youth group. And there was like a heated debate about whether or not our parents were going to let us go see Passion of the Christ with the youth group leaders.
Really?
And ultimately they landed on the side of no.
Good choice.
And it was a good choice. Having seen it now as an adult, oh boy,
Rough.
horrible call
Yeah.
letting anybody
At all.
I read a comment where they were like, I saw this movie when I was 9 with my parents. It was like, what
is
horrible parents are trying to prove a point to your 9-year-old. Anyway, what was your experience like seeing this movie for the first time?
Well, I was living in New York City, and speaking of sexy Italians, I had an Italian boyfriend who I will not name, but I want to, is with a quintessential Italian name. Let's call him
Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone. And like, it's so Italian that he had one of those necklaces where like Jesus was crucified on an anchor. You know what I mean? Like one of those like big ol'.
Oh yeah.
And he loved the movies and Jesus, I guess. And my mom was in town. So the three of us went opening weekend to see The Passion of the Christ. But it's New York City. It's opening weekend and everything was sold out. So we sat in the front row for that movie.
Oh no.
Yeah. Like we were in,
you're in the splash zone.
We were in this, like we could taste Jesus's sweat. I don't know. It was so close. And I have this kind of narcolepsy when I see a movie that I hate, which is I just fall asleep. I'm like, okay, bye.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in The Passion of the Christ. My mom on one side of me, my boyfriend on the other, and I'm just like asleep. And I would
Now-
wake up every once in a while and see what's going on. And I would just be like, you know what? I'm good. And go back to sleep.
So, do you remember what like after your first big bout of narcolepsy in the movie? Do you remember like what the image you saw was? Like
Yeah.
where were we?
I mean, I woke up when he's like being whipped on the pole.
Oh, that's a bad part to wake up at.
And I was like, nope.
I learned there's a term for this, is him being scourged, which I did not know was
Yep. Never needed to
accurate.
know that word. Never needed to see it happen.
No,
But,
did not need to see a cat of 9 tails literally put his claws into a guy.
Yep.
No thanks.
No thanks. But also, like, we're living in New York City. It's 2004. It's in the wake of 9/11, where like there has already been so much violence and like heartache. And then
Sure.
this is the movie. This is the movie that you're going to give us about, I don't know, being saved and redemption, and it's just more like deeply awful imagery. So I was like, nah.
It's okay. There's a lot of problems that I have with the movie in terms of let me start over. Erin.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of problems I have with the way that this movie has cemented itself in the public conscious.
Right.
Okay. So I have problems with the movie, first of all, from filmmaking standpoint.
Yes.
I also have a big problem with the way that people talk about this movie.
Yes.
There's a lot of really bad takes on the side of people of faith who like this movie. There's also a lot of really bad takes on the side of critics who
Yes.
criticize this movie in ways that also don't feel like it's a productive analysis of the movie.
Agree.
It's a really tough movie to talk about.
It's so hard. I know as I was going through, and so I will be honest and say the rewatching it to do this podcast was the actual time that I watched it.
That you watched it. And what did you think?
I stand by my opinion that it's so, I mean, it's so hard. It's such a hard movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. So I was raised part Irish Catholic. I
Sure.
feel like I have some idea.
Now, in the Irish versus Italian Catholic, remind our audience, where is the intensity level?
It's on a potato level as opposed to a pasta level.
Okay, so the pasta, that represents the blood,
Still carbs.
obviously, but
Still bread
you're a little bit
comfortable.
more bland. Yes.
Yeah. Still, I don't know. It explodes my brain because I would think that a movie about this thing would be something beautiful, right? That it could be about inspiring you to feel connected to something greater and more vast,
Sure.
right? Presumably, that's what this storyline is about. And I will say that I am not a super duper religious person, so I know that that was the other thing, as I felt like this time as I was watching it, like, oh no, like maybe I don't connect to this because there are like Easter eggs for all the religious people, pun intended. I'm so sorry, I wrote too many. There are like things that if you were a very religious person, you would be like, oh yeah, that's the.
I remember that
I
from
read that
the
in the
other book in the Bible. Yeah.
That I just like. Why does the devil have a baby in the one scene? Do you know
I have
who
a
the
spoiler
devil
alert for you. That
baby
doesn't
is?
happen in the Bible.
I didn't think so either. I was like, I can't remember that from
Yeah.
going to church. I didn't know that at one part during that scene, the devil suddenly had a weird big-headed baby.
That part really, like, I was so, I'll tell you, kind of enthralled by that part because it's such a weird choice.
It's such a departure.
It's such a strange choice, especially for, and like if you read, reading the interpretations of the many, like I said, the many critics of this movie who are like, oh, why is this happening? And Mel Gibson, like, I'm trying to represent evil. That's the devil. He's carrying a baby. We know it's the devil carrying a baby.
We know it's but you don't even know the devil is the devil in the first scene. That's the hard thing. Is like you
figure out he's the devil.
You figure out he's the devil. You're like, is it? But it just looks like Gollum with really good cheekbones. Like
Yes.
it's. What are we doing? And then the reason you know is because the snake comes out, but then like heavy metal Jesus steps on the snake. Like
Jesus is very hardcore in this movie. But that's the other thing too. It's like for all of the weird stuff in the movie, there's a lot of like God, I wish I had this quote handy. I'm gonna have to find it. There's a lot of people who I say this from the standpoint of like I love David Lynch.
Yeah.
Right. I love his filmmaking. He's very obviously renowned for being as like off the wall and having these crazy departures and scenes in his films. This is this whole through line with the devil showing up multiple times. It is kind of Lynchian, but it's criticized by critics in a way of being like, why would you do something like this? When they would literally you'd see some of these same critics on the flip side being praiseful of, oh wow, look at this crazy, like what are we supposed to interpret? What does this even mean from a different director? And I think that there's like it's so nutty to me that like you can't just talk about the movie's bad filmmaking for just being bad instead of the parts that are actually kind of interesting and compelling. Like,
so you like the devil. You like Gollum with good cheekbones.
I do, because it's different. It's a part of the movie that's not a man being ripped apart by whips and blades and nailed to shit.
I guess so, but like
I think that's like, if we're talking about like we want to get to a part where somebody is saved.
Yeah.
That's, you show it, I think, by having departures from the violence.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with departures from the violence, but like that's a weird departure to make. It's just like some creepy person like walking around holding a baby.
Agree.
Whose baby is that? I'm
The
more worried
world's
about
baby.
the baby. Is
It
it
is
our baby?
It's our baby.
And then I'm like, oh no.
And it's an ugly baby because we are an ugly people.
It just gets worse, right? It is so.
But that's the thing. It's like there's not enough of that. I think that from a filmmaking perspective, it's missing more of the stuff that's like symbolic.
I also feel though, no, like with David Lynch, there presumably, right, it's there's a reason why he's not selecting stories that we all know to tell for the most part.
David Lynch's version of the passion of the Christ,
You
would
wouldn't
be
even know it was
absolutely nuts,
Right.
And it potentially could be just as unwatchable as this. But I feel like it would at least have a much more a higher degree of compelling filmmaking instead of like weird stuff. Like there's a lot of this movie is a long movie. It's 2 hours long almost.
so long.
And most of that is slow-mo.
It's torture montage.
And it's slow-mo torture montage.
with a woman singing under going, oh.
Nominated for an Oscar, that woman.
Come
Good
on.
for her.
I mean, good for her because she sang for 2 hours while they slow-moed torture footage. It was like Mel Gibson did that torture scene in Braveheart and was like, what if we make a whole movie out of that?
Why is there so much slow-mo in this movie?
It's so much. If you sped, I wrote it down as I was rewatching it. It was like, if you sped up the slow-mo, it would be an hour.
Yeah.
Like just
That's
put us out of our misery. And I'm
Fine
sorry
by
to say
me.
that about this particular storyline, but
that's the thing. It's like I don't think that the impact of seeing the violence is actually good filmmaking. I don't think it
agree.
is.
Well, and it was like they used one tool to show emphasis. So like this is very like the slow-mo coins being tossed to Judas. This is very important. So we're going slow.
Yeah.
But then the whole movie is that. So then nothing seems important. It just
Exactly.
seems torturous.
That is exactly what I think. And the big problem that I have. Oh, hold on.
Oh.
We have an issue over here on this camera. Switch out. Put in the other card.
You're too handsome.
We're getting there. It just captured too much of my face.
It was too much glamour. It was Jesus saying, Jay,
Take a moment.
take a breath.
Take a breather here, Jay.
Don't get too enthralled
Think about what
in
you're
this.
thinking about.
I'm glad you're a religious person and you share my views on this.
I'm not religious though. That's
I
the
know,
thing.
but like you have previously been a part of a youth group, which
That's
is
true.
further than I got
That's
in
a
the
good
whole
point.
thing. You know what I mean? Like in
Yes.
terms of, because I was like, I'm going to come in here and be like, well, I went to church a few times in the crying room. You know what I mean? Like they fed me some Cheerios. Do you remember the crying
I
room?
do remember the crying room.
And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore.
We didn't have so I went to a very small church for a long time.
Yeah.
and
You
we,
seem like one that has like a cafeteria though, like a cafeteria church.
We went to one that was literally doubled as a gym.
Yeah. Okay.
We rented it out to basketball teams during the week.
Yeah.
And during services they would put up the hoops.
Yep.
And they put out risers, and it was real janky.
Yeah.
And then I stopped having interest in the Lord.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and then we started going, my parents started going, they were shopping around for other churches.
Yeah.
They found this sort of mega churchy one.
Oh no.
And that one had a crying room.
Yeah.
But also I was like, they tried to get me to go to a youth group there too. And I was like, these people are nice, but like, I don't really give a shit about.
Yeah. It's only
this
cool if there's a
anymore.
basketball hoop involved.
I know.
It's only cool if the stakes are like free shot for my soul, you know?
Well, it was also like it was the problem with being like I was the big fish in a small pond at that other church.
Yeah.
Like I was the
All the
I was
girls
the
were
funny
like,
guy.
Jay
All the
is
girls
cute.
were like,
You could play the guitar?
no.
Oh.
But I was funny.
So you were
I
a
made
medium
jokes.
fish.
Yeah.
The big fish plays the guitar in the church.
We didn't have, but that's the thing. We didn't even have
You
a
didn't
guitar.
have a guitar guy?
No, we had a piano player.
Oh, they had a guitar guy at the mega church, though.
Exactly.
That's why you
And
didn't
as
want
soon
to
as I
go there.
as soon as I go to the mega church, it's all stacked with guitar guys.
Yeah, so
Stacked
handsome.
with cool dudes.
So talented.
And there's no room for a dorky kid who does magic.
No, sir.
No.
Nope.
No. And
Get out of there.
And I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm set.
Your
Thank you
talents
very
are no
much.
longer appreciated. Learn to play an
Goodbye.
instrument or get the out of there.
Yeah. Anyway. But that's the thing. It's like I could see myself seeing this movie and being even more turned off from the faith. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
why is this the movie that brings you to a point that convinces you like, oh, he died for me. Yeah, we already know he died. You don't have to say like, look at how hard he died.
I thought you were going to say you don't have to beat us over the head with it, and I wanted you to say that.
Let me take that again. We're taking it again. All right, this is still. We're all gonna put this all in the edit. I mean, it's like literally, I know how he died. You don't have to beat me over the head with it. Mark it.
Writing credit for Erin and Tracy. No, but no, like I agree with you. I feel like, okay, the story, from what I understand, is that he suffered for us.
Yes. He died for humanity.
But then Mel Gibson decided to make us suffer.
Yes.
Which
for 2 hours.
Seems, and I don't want to be hard on anybody's faith, but other than Mel Gibson's, I guess.
Mel Gibson, I don't
It's
know
a
where he's
lot.
coming from. He's got a lot of issues.
Well,
He's got a lot of issues with the way he communicates and with the things he thinks about people and with the things he thinks people wants.
And Mary
Magdalene? Hot Mary Magdalene?
No, not hot Mary Magdalene. Mary Mama Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Mary Mama Mary.
Who they have a comedy bit with tables and chairs?
Yeah, they're like, what if I built you a barn height table?
What is this? This is never going to catch on. See, that's another instance of the weirdness that I appreciated.
The flashbacks are the best part of the movie.
But like, we could have had so many more of those.
And they could have been, I don't know, they could have been collaged in a way that felt significant, that felt like they were lending themselves to what was actually happening, as opposed to just complete. And I want to say, I am narrative or non-narrative. Like, I can follow a movie. I'm for the weird abstract shit. Like, go for it. But this one, even the flashbacks were like, okay.
We know what's happening here. I think that if you're going to do a story that everybody knows.
Yes.
Like Mel Gibson decided to do in this movie.
Yes.
Then you got to really make some choices that in the adaptation of it. And this is kind of, I think, that way you adapt any existing work into a movie.
Yeah.
You have to make choices that give you, without a shadow of a doubt in the audience's mind, the right to have made that story your own.
Right.
I don't think that just showing how brutal a guy's final hours of his life was,
No.
instead of it being a few paragraphs across a few different books in the Bible, I don't think that really is enough license.
Yeah.
You didn't take a lot of creative license there.
No, it was like, I feel like if a bunch of high schoolers were like, let's retell this story and let's just like it's going to be a lot of blood and there's going to be the devil, and you know what I mean?
Are you familiar with the concept of the passion play?
Yes.
I've seen passion plays too.
Yes.
And I'm sure you may have in your Irish Catholic times.
At the basketball church or at the mega church?
I actually saw this. We saw this. Get this. My basketball church youth group.
Yeah.
We went on a trip. We went on a mission trip to the original Passion Play site in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which has the largest passion play in the South. And I tell you what, they didn't use gallons of blood.
No.
They don't have teenagers.
Was Jesus hot?
Probably.
Oh, you don't remember?
I was like 12.
Okay.
And I was far away. It was a big amphitheater.
Okay.
All right. This is clearly more about the story.
Okay.
They didn't care about making Jesus hot. Not like Mel Gibson, all right? We wanted to make sure he knows the right Jesus. He knows the Jesus with abs.
Yeah.
Who get the abs ripped away. Poor guy. Too
Poor
muscular.
guy.
That's
Oof.
if he was a little bit more frail, he probably would have survived.
I don't know about that.
He could have, maybe they don't find anything to catch on to. This Jesus got too many muscles. Those cat of nine tails really rip into his
good
rippling
muscles,
flesh.
man. Oof.
His obliques.
I mean,
Too many obliques. Too many crunches, this
give
guy.
me all the obliques. You know what I mean?
Body of Christ. That's all Erin needs to get back into church.
Give me a little bread.
Hi-oh. By the way, also, I will say this. Like, if we're talking from a filmmaking perspective, again, you have actors in this movie who some of them are really putting in a really full throttle performance, and some of them are just kind of like,
But I feel like that's direction too. Like I was watching Mary, not Magdalene, and all of her scenes are just looking sad with tears in her eyes.
Yes. It's not much.
Your whole job, we're going to picture your face. Your audition is, can you have your tears well up and just look as sad as you can?
I would like to give some credit to the guys who played the two soldiers who beat Jesus.
I mean,
Because they were really like, they showed a range of emotion, all negative emotion, all like
yeah.
a range of hatred
Like wild,
and disgust.
yeah.
But they like really like, they're putting their whole
Winning
face
hard,
into it.
in
They're
a
putting their
bad
whole
way.
body into it. Like they put themselves, they were like, if I'm going to get cast as the guy who scourged Jesus, I want to make sure that I never get cast in a movie ever again.
I feel like they were just extras that someone was like, okay, well, we need two people that are like going to do this.
Yeah. Mel was probably like, which two guys here look like they perhaps
would enjoy this
the most? You two, come here, Eastern European gentlemen.
Who here don't have any obliques?
Yeah, who here is jealous of Jesus's obliques? Now, there is, of course, a lot of this was a huge success at the box office.
I know.
It made $610 million at the box office.
I contributed to that. Well,
You
my
did.
very Italian boyfriend
He contributed to it.
And my mom. Even my mom was like, I'm glad you slept through that movie.
She was upset.
Yeah, she was like, if I could have, I would have.
I don't even know if my family has seen this movie. I might be the only person in my family who's seen this movie.
I guess that's what I don't understand either is I went into this knowing there was some religious background and that assuming you would know this movie.
And that's the thing, like I know the story.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly read the Passion story.
Right.
Probably, dozens of times over the course of my life in the church and out of the church.
Yeah.
But like, this is just, I mean, I can see why it's polarizing. I kind of get why Mel Gibson made it. If he wants to tell this story, then, and he's like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go outside of Hollywood. Like, there's kind of a level of scrappiness that is almost admirable, even though the final product is something that I'm like, why would anyone feel moved by this?
Yes.
That's the thing that like I truly do not understand.
Same. Same. I cannot imagine watching this and feeling like I was closer to any kind of religious experience at all.
Exactly. I think, and this is like, I think some of the most good and fair and balanced positive criticism of the movie is in that vein, right?
Yeah.
Like Roger Ebert gave this 4 out of 4 stars. Famously, I disagree with Ebert on a lot of things on this podcast.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. But he was a former altar boy. He said, this is a visceral idea of what the Passion consisted of. This is not a sermon or a homily, but a visualization of the central event in the Christian religion. Take it or leave it. He's right. He's 100% accurate. This is exactly what it is. And it affected him certainly in a way that it seems like it didn't affect me. And maybe that's the thing, is like maybe people who aren't religious aren't going to be affected by this, but also then that calls into question all the comments I read on YouTube that were like, I didn't give a shit about God, and then I watched this and I was like, wow, he did that? I'm in. Count me in, brother.
I think that there are...
Erin has been rendered speechless.
I'm speechless. I think that I'm not opposed. I am in life opposed to violence. Let me say that up front. Like, I'm not, however, in art, I think violence can do something very special in terms of engaging an audience. And so as I was watching this movie again, and I think violence can be sublime and beautiful and make you feel things that resonate in a way that only that experience can create.
Yes.
And so But I think in order to achieve that, you have to be extra intentional with how you choose to use that violence and how you depict it.
It's a really careful brush to paint with.
Yeah. And even if you aren't careful with it, that lack of care then necessitates a further artistic shaping of how you show like gratuitous violence.
Yes. I will say that like the level of gratuitousness of the violence in this movie, it is so gratuitous that like I don't really have a weak stomach anymore because I've seen a bunch of movies. I've seen a bunch of movies that are pretty violent.
It started out weak.
It started out weak. I grew.
grew.
But I was like, And there's a lot of like, I've seen a lot of people criticize how violent Marvel movies are. There's a lot of gunplay and shooting and stuff. But if you're going to say like that's gratuitous and that's that's immoral, and then look at this and be like, well, this is moral because it happened to my Lord and Savior.
Right. But it's all artistic interpretation. Like this isn't, I mean, it's all artistic interpretation. This isn't the moment that it didn't happen at half speed. You know what I mean? With a woman singing underneath. This isn't real. This isn't a documentary. This is some crazy guy's interpretation of a like very upsetting story, which is supposed to, at the very heart of it, symbolize ultimate love, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, when I finished rewatching this, when I didn't choose to absent myself by falling asleep, I was alone in my apartment, and
oh boy,
I did not feel love.
I didn't feel that either.
I felt very sad and very heavy and very alone. And I think that the virtue of what this story is to tell you that you are not alone, right? And again, I'm not a religious scholar. I haven't done.
But you're making great and accurate points.
What I know is like it's that sacrifice was to tell us that you are not alone. And when I finished watching that movie and was in the glow of my TV with no lights on in my apartment, I was like, okay.
This feels like a movie that
I'm punished.
is written and designed for. I can't even. Let's push just regular movie going audience out the window for a second here.
Right.
If we're talking like on a religious basis, this movie seems like it is built to be watched by people of the Christian faith who ascribe to a version of it where they love all of the Old Testament shit and don't realize that the whole basis of the religion that they're really following is New Testament teachings, which is all about love and tolerance and you know, embracing people of all different kinds,
right?
And all of the stuff that like the way that you can say this about any religion. You can twist the words of any of the religious texts to create whatever hateful ideology you want to go to. But this seems like it's designed for the people who want to look at all of the stuff that's like, oh, I loved the guy. I loved the guy. I loved the God. Who knows what God is?
That guy.
I love that. God is a woman. I love that way. The way that woman really, really stuck it to the gays and stuck it to the people who wore cloth that mixed with each other and all that stuff.
But I mean, now hearing you say that, I think you just said that this movie got Trump elected. No, but like I think.
Well, this movie definitely got Bush elected again.
Well, no,
I mean, this is 2004.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I do. Hearing that, it makes a lot of sense that was the mentality in the wake of 9/11, of like what was happening in the world, and that this was supporting a certain worldview where I feel like this isn't funny. I feel like we need to be
where's your other dad jokes? Come on, you got a whole page of them.
How about...
Where's your joke about how we're really nailing this episode? Huh? Come on.
I would like to tell a joke about the carcass of the little pony in that one scene. No, but I think you're so right. It's like, okay, it belongs to that a very specific way of seeing the world, maybe.
Yes, I think, and this is the thing that like I there's a lot of ways to interpret this movie, I think. I think that the thing with this movie is it is a lot like the Bible in that there's like a broad way to interpret it.
Right.
And you can, unfortunately, it's not as easy as it is with the Bible to like pick certain parts and say, oh, these are actually like good juicy nuggets of stuff that like I can carry on even not as a religious person. Like this is a good proverb. There's literally a book called Proverbs in the Bible, right?
Right.
I'm not learning anything by watching The Passion of the Christ other than like
Jesus has a hot bod and the devil has a baby. That's what I
yes.
learned.
And also there's all of this other stuff that like there's so many criticisms of this movie, not just from like the violence perspective, but also like anti-Semitism has been accused of in this movie. We all know that Mel Gibson he's probably, I don't know how much publicly he's saying stuff anymore, but he's on record as being a guy who has some problematic stances.
Well, then also this movie, and this is a whole other, but it's in Aramaic.
Yes. They really dug deep.
What? Come on.
They put a lot of it in subtitles. They didn't put what I would assume is them just saying some really, really bad shit.
Yeah.
Not in subtitles. Which is like, if you're gonna make this movie, go all in. Leave in the Aramaic swears.
Oh my God.
All right? Just because the movie, you already got your R-rated movie. All right? Let the kids see these guys doing the best acting of their entire lives while they're beating the shit out of Jesus.
And
saying
the
fuck
worst.
this guy in Aramaic. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
You can only live once. So I decided to study Aramaic in my Duolingo app after this movie. It's a lie.
It's like they got Aramaic and Duolingo. Damn.
No. Not sponsored by Duolingo, but maybe in the future. Call us. Call Jay.
Call me.
Call Jay.
I would love
Duolingo.
to get you up in the sponsorship.
We will learn Aramaic.
And let me say this also. I think this is
special effects. The special effects are bad. All the birds.
they got
are
nominated
like,
for best makeup.
It's the worst. The dove special effect is bad. The pecking out of the eyes special effect is circa
that
the
part was pretty
birds.
bad.
It's so bad.
It's pretty bad. Let me while we're on the subject
Okay,
of
I'm
like
sorry. I'm being very random.
No, it's okay. Because we gotta, I gotta touch on this because I did have one of my interns do some deep research on Jim Caviezel. You know about where Jim Caviezel's at right now, yeah?
I have no idea.
Okay, so Jim Caviezel is working with Mel Gibson right now on the sequel to The Passion of the Christ called The Resurrection of the Christ.
Stop.
Here's the other thing, though. In that same sort of
Jay.
vein of perhaps some of the people who watched this movie got the really wrong idea.
Yeah.
Jim Caviezel is a QAnon guy.
Yeah.
Jim Caviezel spoke at the Health and Freedom Conference in 2021 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He spoke on a theory regarding the adrenochroming of children, saying that rich people torture children to harvest their adrenochrome. During the filming of, I would assume, The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel was struck by lightning, accidentally scourged during the scourging scene. Why do you have real weapons on set, Mel Gibson? Come on now. Had his shoulder dislocated and suffered from pneumonia and hypothermia. Mel Gibson reportedly warned Jim Caviezel that playing Jesus would hurt his acting career.
Oh my God. I was afraid to do this podcast and talk about this movie for a very certain reason. And now I'm worried about this for a whole other set of reasons. So thanks, Jay.
You worried about getting struck by lightning and unbelieving QAnon like Jim Caviezel
No,
did.
I'm worried that now QAnon is going to come after me.
Honestly, we need the listenership. But that's the thing. It's like, okay, listen, this part is just for the QAnon people. If you watch this movie and you are someone who is like, wow, I can't believe that people don't know about how violently Jesus was treated during the last few hours of his life.
And like how you were going to say months.
I was going to say years.
It felt like years.
Watching this movie did feel like
It
years.
felt like years. I'm older.
But if you're watching this and you're like, wow, I got to tell some more people about how violently Jesus was treated, then perhaps you got to read more of the New Testament. If you're looking at numerology, if you're a religious person at all, and you want to, but that's the thing. I feel like this is saying stuff on deaf ears anyway.
Well, I think then my brain says, okay, is there a part of the population that if they saw this movie, whether or not they liked it by virtue of what it is, do they have to say they like it?
I don't know.
You know
Maybe.
what I mean? Did you pick a story? I mean, it's like I can't fail if I make it about Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, is there enough of that part of the population that you're talking
the
about?
criticism is like, oh, well, those people don't like it because they're godless heathens.
Yeah.
No, I didn't like this movie because I think it's bad filmmaking.
Right.
I think that you can tell a good story.
Right.
The Bible has a lot of really interesting stories in it.
Right.
I think that the story of Jesus is an interesting story.
I agree.
There's a reason why the Bible is one of the best-selling books in the world, and not necessarily because of the religious part.
Strong agree. And I think a lot of the stories in there are fascinating and would be such great material for artistic interpretation.
Love the Book of Revelation. Book of Revelation, fascinating. Also, Book of Revelation, Christians.
This does feel very Christian, looking at you and me and thinking about this conversation.
But Book of Revelation says it. There's only room for 144,000 people in heaven. Heaven's full.
Yeah.
There's no more room.
Y'all
caping for Jesus. There's no more room.
Y'all, it's all good. You don't have to like the movie.
This is how I think we should go out.
Okay.
You
Pun
mentioned
intended.
earlier.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You even went so sorry with a Christian
So
one.
sorry.
Or a Christian. What am I saying? A Canadian.
My nose is running.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
If you were... You were speaking earlier about how there's a way that violence can be used to like further a narrative and use it in an artistically satisfying way.
Yeah.
There are movies for me that come to mind as good examples of this. I was hoping that you could maybe share what you think some of your favorites are.
Oh yeah.
And I'll say mine while you think of yours, because
Yeah.
the one that came to mind immediately for me is Drive.
Oh yeah.
I think Drive has a great the violence in that movie it's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, there's spoiler alert. There's a scene where a guy gets his head stomped in an elevator.
Yeah.
But the way that the violence is scattered throughout the movie
Yep.
and used in just the most delicate ways
Yes.
to really like show pivotal turning points in the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of how you can have violence that is gratuitous and shocking and maybe a little bit sickening if you got a weak constitution, but it's going to ultimately serve your storytelling instead of being the thing that consumes the people, the way people interpret your movie.
Right.
What do you think?
I know this also was a book first, so basically the same, but A History of Violence comes to mind.
I've never seen A History of Violence.
Oh, you should.
I've heard it's very good.
It's a graphic novel, so like very highbrow, basically like the Bible, but
Sure.
read by all. But that movie too is part of the filmmaking behind that, they really wanted the violence to be realistic. Like there's a part where someone grabs a coffee pot and like smacks somebody's face with it, and you can see the after effects, and like it's the violence and the result are very visceral and very realistic, intentionally.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was a movie where as I was watching it, I was like, oh, it's on purpose. Like somebody decided, because of what the storyline is about this character and about where they come from and about their background, that it's important for us to see not like the Hollywood version of violence.
Right.
Like the reality of what it looks like when somebody's face is hanging off of their skull, right? I like that one.
That sounds great.
It's
gnarly.
It's gnarly. It's rough.
But damn, that's the thing. If you're gonna go with that, sprinkle it in. Use violence as little spice, a little Emerald Lagasse bam, a little dusting.
Yeah, well, and I think too, maybe what the violence part of this about the Passion of the Christ, what makes me uncomfortable? That's the wrong word. What makes me hate this movie about the torture part? It makes me a little uncomfortable that
The torture part. Also, you mean the entire movie? You mean the entirety
movie.
of the runtime?
I hate the whole movie. Again, not the story, but the execution. I hate
the sin, not the sinner.
I hate.
Wait, what is it? Yeah, hate the sinner, love the sin?
Yeah.
No, I got that wrong.
It's the other way.
Hate
the sin, love the sinner.
This movie, love Mel Gibson.
No, wrong.
Is that wrong?
Hate the devil, love
Love
the baby.
We all loved a baby.
No, I don't know. I think the violence part of this made me feel disconnected from my humanity, or like the movie was disconnected from humanity because it was so excessive, and the way the people that were torturing Jesus were behaving, it made me feel like, and maybe this is my sunny view of the world, it made me feel like, from what I know of humanity, even in what is unimaginable violence, and I know that happens all around the world and in terrible, terrible ways, it feels like in a story about the Bible and a story about an ultimate sacrifice, and that is ultimately about forgiving all of what is terrible in all of us, that there has to be room for more nuance to the people that are around in that scene and what it is they're experiencing, and the depth of their humanity being something that is complicated and fraught and sickening.
Yeah. This is a movie that deals in absolutes.
Yeah.
And we all know
Yeah.
that life is not in black and white. We exist in a world full of shades of gray. And when you deal in absolutes, unfortunately, that means you also reduce both the people who are on your side and the people who you are ostensibly against to cardboard cutouts, to caricatures.
Right.
Because it's the easiest way to point at somebody and go, that's the other,
It's
I
bad.
hate that person, this
They're
is bad.
Yeah.
And although I realize that I'm saying all of this on a podcast where the whole premise is we're being super polemic and saying we hate this thing, this is probably the only time I'll ever say, hey, let's have a nuanced view.
Yeah.
But I think if you're still listening to this podcast and you're like, oh, I can't wait to fucking tell this guy about Comet Ping Pong Pizza and how he's correct. Here's the thing. I don't care, because I think that you're already on the side of like, oh, I have this view of the world that is so, like, I'm so unwilling to change it. And I feel like this movie is a symptom of that.
Yeah.
I feel like it is, you described it so perfectly just now. There is no humanity in this movie. We do not live in a world with no humanity, though.
No.
We live in a world where there is, as much as we are told otherwise, a preponderance of people who are kind, who have goodwill, and who are willing to help a community out. I mean, for God's sake, today, the Brooklyn subway shooter was found by a member of the community.
Yeah.
Who is hailed as a hero now.
Yeah.
Wasn't found by the cops.
Nope.
Wasn't found by the people on this giant manhunt. It was found by a guy who installs security cameras for a living and sells jewel pods, I guess. And just saw this guy chilling on the street and was like, oh, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Let's get this fucking guy.
Yeah.
That's what this world that we exist in is not as easily divined and easily defined as we believe it to be.
No, and that's what is the best part about it is that it's way more complicated than that.
And I think that I wish this movie was a little bit more complicated.
I do too.
And I will say I don't wish that to ever watch this movie again. So hopefully this is the last time, Erin.
Same.
I hope this is not an annual
so
episode
mad
where we
at
go
you.
back.
What are we going to do
You're
when
mad
the
at me.
sequel comes out?
This was your idea.
I'm mad at you for making me watch it again. I'm mad at you for not letting me do Demolition Man. And like that little scene where Sylvester Stallone gets cryogenically frozen.
And you get to see his butt.
And kind of a little
And
bit,
of his
a little
dong.
bit of, yeah, a little.
You get to see a little bit.
It was a little pubic hair, though, I think.
He probably grooms. He looked pretty hairless.
Yeah, but except for that spot, I feel like
that one,
in
he's
the
got a little
ice.
triangle.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to be cryogenically frozen, you don't know what hairstyle they're going to be.
I mean, you
It's gonna
might
be
as well
popular.
go full bush. Protect it.
Go for something that's classic that'll always be able to be manicured to your liking.
Yeah.
Erin.
Yes.
Where can the listeners find you on the internet if they want to see your stuff or try and convert you to QAnon, which apparently
Please
we
don't.
may attract? Please don't do that. Please don't do that. We don't care. But you should follow Erin because she's got
Yes.
great comedy.
Oh, thank you. You can find me at Erin Tracy Comedy everywhere on Twitter and Instagram and on my website, Erin Tracy Comedy. Tracy spelled with no E like Dick Tracy. Just think Dick Tracy, but type Erin. Erin Tracy Comedy. That's where you can find me. Yeah, and I'm not interested in any herbal supplements that will eventually lead me to QAnon following.
Essential oils,
Essentially.
no. Amway, no. I don't want any of your colloidal silver. You can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates. I have some stuff coming up this summer, so keep your eyes peeled. Right now I'm in the thick of TV writing land, so no shows probably for a bit. But if you like the show, tell a podcast friend, somebody who listens to podcasts who's a friend. That's
I
what I
like
was
a
going with
podcast
for
friend.
that.
A pod pal.
A pod pal. Yes.
Tell your pod
Tell your
pal.
pod pal and talk about this episode with them in a safe environment where you realize, oh, humanity is wonderful.
Yeah.
And also subscribe to Patreon. Be a pod pal for my pod wallet. And Erin, thanks again. This is a wonderful. I'm so glad this episode went long.
Yeah.
It only felt right.
Just like the movie.
Heyo. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.